It was cold in the garage, not freezing, but the kind of cold that makes your fingertips numb after a while and sinks into your bones if you sit too long. The metal chairs didn't help. One was wobbly, and the other had a missing rubber foot, making it scrape every time you shifted your weight. That's where they put us. Me and my 2 kids. Thanksgiving dinner, my sister's idea, hosted in her picture-perfect home with matching napkins and gold-trimmed plates. Except we weren't part of the picture. We were pushed into the garage like we were some kind of afterthought. I could hear the laughter from inside, the clink of forks, the way my family joked and teased each other like nothing was wrong, like I wasn't out here with my children, watching steam rise from our food because it was already going cold. My son Tyler tried to smile. He always does. 11 years old and already trying to hold it together for his little sister. "It's kind of like a picnic, right, Mom?" he whispered. I nodded, forcing a smile, but the sting in my eyes betrayed me. My daughter Ava didn't say anything. She just picked at her mashed potatoes like they had betrayed her. Then I heard it. My sister's voice, loud, cutting through the room from behind the slightly open door to the kitchen. "She's used to scraps," she said, followed by a wave of laughter. Like it was the most normal thing in the world, like that was all I deserved. I looked down at my plate. I had worked double shifts all week just to make sure I could bring something, homemade stuffing, because I didn't want to come empty-handed. But they didn't even serve it. I found it on the counter, still in the glass dish I brought it in, untouched. No one had even opened the foil. My chest tightened. I wanted to grab my kids and walk out, but where would we go? I didn't have the gas to drive across town, and I couldn't afford to ruin this day for them. It was Thanksgiving after all. Then Ava looked up at me. "Why does Aunt Claire hate you, Mom?" Her voice was small, but it cut through me like glass. I didn't have an answer. Or maybe I did, but none of it made sense anymore. Claire had always been like this. Perfect grades, perfect husband, perfect house. And then there was me, the single mom who couldn't keep a marriage, who worked nights at a diner and still couldn't get ahead. Maybe in her eyes, I was just a permanent stain on the family photo. Before I could say anything, the hum of a powerful engine pulled us all to attention. The garage door had one of those dusty plastic windows, and through it we saw the sleek silhouette of a black limo pull into the driveway. Not just any car, a limousine. Tyler's eyes went wide. "Mom, who's that?" I didn't know. The laughter from inside dulled as people noticed it too. Claire's voice dropped. I heard chairs scooting back. Someone ran to the front window, then came the sound of heels on concrete. Sharp, confident. A figure appeared at the garage entrance, silhouetted by the car's headlights. She stepped into the light slowly, wearing a long cream coat and dark red lipstick that matched the gloves she took off as she looked around. "I'm looking for the owner of this house," she said, her voice smooth, clear, like she expected to be obeyed. Claire appeared at the door just behind her, confused and flustered. "Can I help you?" she asked, tilting her head with that fake polite smile she always used for salespeople or strangers. The woman looked her up and down once, then turned away. "Number I'm not here for you," she said, scanning the garage before her eyes locked on mine. There was a pause. Everyone was quiet. Even my kids didn't move. The woman stepped closer, her heels clicking against the concrete floor as if she belonged in this space more than any of us. She stopped right in front of me. "You," she said softly. "I've been looking for you." I blinked, caught completely off guard. My heart started pounding, but I didn't know why. "Me?" She nodded slowly, then turned back toward the limo. The driver stepped out and opened the door. "Come with me," she said. "I need to talk to you. It's urgent." Claire had stepped into the garage now, and I could feel the heat of her anger boiling under her skin. "Excuse me, but who exactly are you?" she snapped. The woman turned her head slightly, as if acknowledging her but not bothering to look directly at her. "I'll explain everything in time, but not to you." That was the first crack. Claire's confident facade faltered. She looked at me with narrowed eyes, like she was trying to make sense of the sudden shift, like she didn't understand how someone so used to scraps could be wanted by someone so powerful. I hesitated, but then I looked at my kids. Ava was holding her fork like it was the only anchor she had left. Tyler's hand was on her shoulder. They needed answers just as much as I did, so I stood up. Claire stepped forward. "You're not seriously going with her, are you?" I met her eyes. "Why not?" "Not like I was invited in." The woman smiled, just barely. A flicker of something knowing. She stepped aside and gestured toward the limo. I turned to my kids. "Stay here, I'll just be a minute." But the woman shook her head. "Bring them. They need to hear this too." We walked past Claire, who didn't say anything this time. Just watched us like she was trying to memorize the moment, because something had shifted, and she could feel it. The limo was warm, almost too warm after the chill of the garage. The seats were soft leather, and there were bottled waters and mints in a silver tray. My kids sat quietly, eyes darting from me to the woman across from us. "My name is Veronica," she began, folding her hands in her lap. "And I'm here because someone made a mistake. A long time ago." I leaned forward. "What kind of mistake?" She looked at me for a long second, like she was weighing how much to say. Then she sighed. "The kind of mistake that changes someone's entire life." My hands tightened. My heart was racing again. "You were adopted," she said. Everything froze. "What?" My voice came out like a whisper. Veronica nodded. "You were taken from someone who didn't know how to fight the system back then, someone who was silenced, someone very powerful, who's been looking for you ever since." I couldn't speak. Neither could my kids. She pulled a thin folder from her coat. "This is you. Birth certificate, photos, hospital records. It was buried deep, but we found it. And the person who's been looking for you, she's dying." I swallowed hard, my mind trying to process 1,000 images at once. "She owns half the city," Veronica said quietly, "and she wants to meet her daughter before she dies." I shook my head slowly. "You must have the wrong person." "No," Veronica said firmly. "We're sure. And the woman inside that house, Claire, she knew." My blood turned to ice. "She knew," I echoed. Veronica nodded. "She made sure you were never told, because she wanted everything, and if the truth came out, she'd lose it all." I couldn't breathe. My sister had lied. Not just lied, she had stolen my life. I looked at my kids. Tyler's mouth was open, eyes wide. Ava was clutching my arm. Veronica leaned forward slightly. "You have a choice. We can walk back in there, and nothing changes. Or you can come with me, meet the woman who gave birth to you, and reclaim what's rightfully yours." I didn't answer, because in that moment, everything I thought I knew had shattered, and for the first time in my life, I felt something rise inside me. Not anger, not fear, power. The limo glided through the city like a shadow, silent and smooth, while inside, my thoughts were anything but calm. Tyler sat beside me, trying to be brave, but I could feel the tension in his little hand gripping mine. Ava leaned into my side, her eyes wide and searching, like she was trying to read the world through my heartbeat. Veronica sat across from us, composed, silent now, letting the weight of her revelations settle in the air. I stared out the tinted window, watching the streetlights flicker past, each one a blur of yellow, like moments I'd missed, things I'd never been told. I couldn't wrap my head around it. All those years, every scraped dollar, every cold night, every time I'd begged Claire for help only to be met with that same blank stare. And she knew. She knew I didn't belong in that life. She knew who I really was. And she chose silence. I turned to Veronica. "Why now?" She took a breath before answering. "Because time's running out. Your mother, your biological mother, has maybe weeks, months if she's lucky. She made peace with a lot of things in her life, except losing you." I blinked hard. "She didn't give me up?" Veronica shook her head. "She never would have. You were taken from her, lied to, documents forged. She wasn't in a position to fight it at the time, and people around her made sure she didn't find out the truth until years later. By then, the trail had gone cold." My heart felt heavy, like something was pressing against my chest from the inside. "And Claire?" "She and your adoptive mother were close friends back then. When the adoption went through, let's just say Claire saw an opportunity. Your adoptive family wasn't supposed to be permanent, but once your birth mother started asking questions, the records disappeared. Only Claire knew where to look. I felt sick. Everything suddenly made sense. The way Claire treated me like an outsider even when we were kids. How she always made sure I knew I didn't quite belong. She kept me beneath her, always, because if the truth came out, I'd be above her in every way. We pulled up to a gated property on the edge of the city, the kind of house you only see in magazines. The gate opened without a sound, and the limo rolled up a curved driveway, stopping in front of a massive house with wide stone steps and flickering lanterns. The door opened before we even got out. A tall man in a dark suit stood waiting. "Ms. Hartley," he said to Veronica with a slight nod. "They're ready." Veronica turned to me. "Her name is Eleanor. She's inside." I stepped out of the car with my kids, my legs trembling slightly, but I stood tall. Tyler squeezed my hand again. Ava stayed close. The house smelled like jasmine and old books, a strange but comforting mix. The foyer alone was bigger than Claire's whole kitchen. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and a staircase that curved like something out of a dream. A nurse led us down a hallway to a sunroom where the light was soft and golden, filtered through sheer curtains. And there, in a recliner surrounded by pillows, sat a woman. Her silver hair was brushed neatly, her skin pale but glowing in the sunlight. She turned as we entered, and her eyes locked onto mine. They were the same eyes I saw in the mirror every morning. She gasped softly, "It's really you." I didn't know what to say. My voice caught somewhere between my throat and my heart. Eleanor opened her arms just slightly, not pushing, just hoping. I stepped forward, kneeling beside her. She touched my face with trembling fingers, like she couldn't believe I was real. And I felt it. The connection. Deeper than blood. Deeper than anything I'd ever known. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I looked for you." For years I nodded, swallowing a lump in my throat. "I believe you." She looked at the kids. "Are these my children?" I said. "Tyler and Ava." She smiled, and something in her face softened. "They're beautiful." We stayed in that room for hours. She told me stories about her life, about the night I was born, about how she'd trusted the wrong people at the worst time, about how she'd built everything she had from scratch after losing me, always hoping she'd find me again. And then she showed me the will. "I changed it the moment I knew the truth," she said. "It's all yours." I blinked. "What do you mean?" "This house, the company, the estate, everything I built. I want you to have it. You and your children." I couldn't breathe. It didn't feel real. "You don't have to decide now," she added gently. "I just wanted you to know that you were never forgotten. And now, you don't have to struggle anymore." I shook my head slowly. "But Claire..." Eleanor's face darkened slightly. "I know what she did, and she'll answer for it." We stayed the night in the guest wing. They brought us fresh clothes, food that tasted like something out of a 5-star restaurant, and more peace than I'd known in years. Ava laughed for the first time in days. Tyler fell asleep with a full belly and no fear in his eyes. But I didn't sleep. I stayed by the window, watching the moonlight pour over the garden, thinking, this changed everything. I had a choice to make. I could walk away from Claire, from that house of bitterness and smallness and lies, or I could go back, not as the poor sister in the garage, but as someone who knew the truth, someone with power, someone who deserved to be heard. And deep down, I knew. I was going back, not for revenge, for justice, because Claire didn't just steal my past, she stole the future my children should have had, and I was going to take it back. The car ride back to Claire's house felt different this time. Same roads, same trees, same houses. But the world didn't look the same anymore. I wasn't returning as the forgotten one, starving for scraps, begging for warmth. I was returning as someone who had finally seen the truth, touched it with her own hands. My heart didn't race with fear now, it pulsed with purpose. Ava and Tyler sat quietly in the back seat, but I could see the difference in their faces too. like something had clicked inside them, like maybe they didn't have to shrink anymore. Veronica sat beside me again, composed as always. "You sure about this?" I nodded. "They need to see me, as I am now." She didn't say anything for a while. Then she murmured, "They won't like it." "I'm counting on that." When we pulled up to Claire's house, everything looked exactly as we'd left it. The smug wreath on the front door, the neatly trimmed bushes, the fake warmth glowing behind the windows. A lie, wrapped in holiday lights. I stepped out slowly. It was still Thanksgiving night. The garage was dark now, the dinner over. But I knew they'd still be inside, finishing dessert, probably laughing about me, calling it a charity case gone wrong. I knocked. Once. Claire answered. She wasn't expecting me. That much was obvious. Her eyes widened, and she took half a step back. "You're back?" I smiled, calm. "We forgot something." Her gaze flicked to Veronica, who was still standing by the car in her sharp suit. Then to my kids, who stepped beside me, no longer hunched or small. "I don't know what you think I think you should let me in," I said. She hesitated, torn between arrogance and fear. But curiosity won. She stepped aside. The room went quiet the moment I entered. All those faces turned. My cousins, their husbands, her perfect children with their perfect posture and judgmental eyes. I could feel the shift, like they all sensed something had changed, but couldn't quite say what. "You missed dessert," one of them muttered awkwardly. I nodded. "That's all right. I've had better." Claire crossed her arms. "So what? You're here to guilt-trip us again? Throw a fit because we didn't sit you at the big table?" I didn't flinch. "Number, I came to thank you." She blinked. "Excuse me? If you hadn't shown me what you really thought of me, if you hadn't shoved me and my children into that garage, I might never have seen what I was missing, or what I deserved." Her expression changed, but she kept her voice mocking. "Oh please, you're being dramatic. You always were. No one forced you to sit out there." "My kids heard what you said," I replied. "They heard you say we were used to scraps. You looked right at them and said it like it was a joke, and that's the part I can't forgive." There was a pause, a tight silence. Then Claire scoffed. "You act like you're some princess. You're nothing but—" "A Hartley," Veronica said suddenly, stepping inside for the first time. Her voice was crisp, sharp. "Actually, she's the rightful heir of Eleanor Hartley's estate, which includes $1 billion business, multiple properties, and yes, this house." Claire laughed. Loud. Too loud. "Are you joking?" Veronica stepped forward, pulled a folder from her bag, and opened it slowly. "You want the birth certificate, the adoption documents, the DNA test, the last will and testament? I've got all 4. Claire's face paled. "She was kidnapped," Veronica said, her tone cold now. "Lied to, and used, by people she trusted." "No, that's not true," Claire snapped. There's no proof." "There's more proof than you'd like," Veronica cut in. "And now, legally, everything Eleanor owned passes to her daughter. That includes a review of all financial records tied to this family, including your involvement. You can't come in here and just—" "I can," I said. And I did. Claire opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her face was crumbling, piece by piece, pride shattering like glass underfoot. She looked around, expecting someone, anyone, to come to her defense. But no one moved. No one spoke. Veronica's phone buzzed. She looked at it, then at me. "Eleanor wants to see you again tomorrow. She's drafting the formal transfer documents in the morning. Your legal status will be updated before the end of the week." I nodded. "Thank you." Claire still hadn't moved. "Oh, and Claire?" I added gently. "The garage?" It was a blessing, because now I know I'll never have to sit at your table again. I turned, took Tyler and Ava's hands, and walked out. And as I stepped into the night air, I realized something. They could keep their chandeliers and crystal and their sad little gossip circles. I had something better now. Truth, blood, a family who wanted me, and the power to never be humiliated again. But I wasn't finished yet. Claire wasn't the only one who'd lied, and there were others who had helped keep me buried. I was going to find them, and when I did, they'd wish they'd left me in that garage. We didn't go home, not yet. Veronica arranged for us to stay in a hotel downtown, a place that had real linen sheets, soundproof walls, and hot cocoa that room service brought up in porcelain mugs. The kids were mesmerized. Tyler kept opening and closing the curtains with the little remote, watching the city lights flicker like stars, while Ava asked if she could sleep in the fluffy white robe. I stood by the window, watching the skyline. It was funny, in a way, how just 24 hours ago I was wiping cranberry sauce off a folding chair in a cold garage. Now I was staring out at a world I finally had access to, but my mind wasn't at peace. Not yet. Eleanor had opened a door, but inside that door was a corridor of locked rooms, old secrets, missing pieces, faces I hadn't thought about in years. One of them was Margaret. She was Eleanor's cousin. I remembered her vaguely, more from fragments and whispers. A woman who used to visit the big house once a year and always brought Claire extra gifts, money, attention. When I was small, I remembered her looking through me like I was invisible. I always thought she just didn't like kids. Now I wondered if she'd known the truth all along. The next morning, I asked Veronica about her. She stayed close to Claire after the adoption, Veronica said, sipping her espresso. There's evidence Margaret helped hide the forged documents, possibly even paid to bury certain files. I stared down at my untouched tea. Where is she now? Lives about 2 hours out. Estate on the coast. Quiet. Old money? No kids? I can arrange a visit. I nodded. Arrange it. That afternoon, we drove through winding roads lined with pine trees and fog, the kind of road that felt like it led you away from the world. Margaret's estate wasn't as grand as Eleanor's, but it reeked of status, gray stone walls, black iron gates, and a silence so thick it almost choked you. She opened the door herself, still tall, sharp-eyed, with perfectly styled silver hair and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Veronica," she said with a thin smirk, "and you must be the garage girl." I didn't flinch. "I'm her daughter." Eleanor's her smile cracked just slightly, but she stepped aside. Inside, the house was pristine, cold, lifeless, like a museum of someone else's memories. We sat in the drawing room. Veronica stayed standing. "So," Margaret said, folding her hands, "you've come to stir up the past." "I've come for answers." She tilted her head. "And what makes you think I owe you any?" I looked her dead in the eye. "Because you were part of it. You helped take me from her." Margaret didn't deny it. "Eleanor wasn't fit at the time," she said, almost bored. "She was grieving, mentally unstable. The board was nervous. You were better off placed elsewhere." "Elsewhere? You mean with people who treated me like trash?" She shrugged. "Claire had ambition. That's more than Eleanor had back then. You were fine. I was stolen." Silence. Finally, she sighed. "It was a different time. We made choices to protect the family name." I leaned forward. "You made choices to protect power, your name, your image. You didn't care about the child, you cared about the story." The silence. Margaret's mouth tightened. "And what now? You'll take the money? The house? Parade around like some noble heir? You think that gives you leverage?" "No," I said, "but it gives me truth. And the truth always finds its way out." She stood abruptly. "I won't be threatened in my own home." "I'm not threatening you. I'm informing you. There's an audit coming. Legal reviews. Everyone involved in the forged adoption will be investigated." Margaret's face finally changed, just a flicker of real fear. Veronica nodded once. "Including the transfer of Eleanor's stock shares, I'd advise preparing a statement, or better yet, an apology." We left her there, standing in the doorway, stone-faced, as if everything she'd spent her life building was slowly slipping out from under her. Back in the car, I felt something shift. Every step closer to the truth made me feel lighter. Not just for me, but for Ava, for Tyler, for every night I had cried alone, wondering why love always came at a cost. That night, Eleanor called. She sounded tired, but calm. "She's scared, isn't she?" she asked softly. "She should be," I replied. You're stronger than I ever was, you know. I didn't believe that. Not yet. But I was getting there. There's something else, Eleanor said after a pause. A letter. I never sent it. I wasn't sure where you were, but I wrote it the year you turned 16. Why 16? That was the year I started dreaming about you again. The nightmares stopped. I started believing we'd find each other. I kept the letter. It's in my study. I want you to have it. The next morning, Veronica and I went back to Eleanor's estate. The letter was inside a wooden box, lined with old photos and faded fabric from a baby blanket. My baby blanket. My hands shook as I read it. She wrote about the first time she held me, the sound I made when I sneezed, the way I used to wrap my hand around her finger. She wrote about the day she lost me, how empty the house felt, how the walls echoed with silence for years. And then she wrote one line that changed everything. They can steal your future, they can try to erase your name, but they will never erase what you meant to me. And one day, I hope you read this and know, I never gave up on you. I folded the letter carefully and placed it back in the box. Outside, the sky was overcast. A storm was coming, but I felt calm for the first time in years. I had the truth. I had my children. And I had the strength to finish what they tried to bury. The storm rolled in just after dusk, thick clouds swallowing the last bits of light. Wind howled through the trees outside Eleanor's estate, but inside, everything was still. Too still. I stood in the hallway outside her study, the letterbox still clutched in my hands. My fingers had gone numb, not from the cold, but from the weight of what I now knew. Tyler and Ava were asleep upstairs, their breathing soft and even. Veronica was on a call in the next room, likely arranging the next wave of legal maneuvers. But something didn't feel right. I could feel it in my skin, like eyes were watching me again, like someone wasn't finished. I was right. The doorbell rang at exactly 8:47 p.m. I opened the door and froze. It was Claire. Drenched from the rain, hair matted to her face, but her expression was unchanged, haughty, controlled. That same twisted smile she wore every time she felt backed into a corner. "Are you going to invite me in?" she asked. "No." She stepped inside anyway. Veronica appeared instantly, phone still in her hand. "She's not welcome here." Claire ignored her. "I came to make things right." I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was pathetic. "You don't get to make things right now." Claire didn't flinch. "You think Eleanor is some saint? You think you're safe just because she's accepted you back?" I stepped forward. "Don't talk about her." She smiled, cold, sharp. "Did she tell you about the agreement? About the clause in the inheritance?" "What clause?" "She didn't mention it?" Claire looked at Veronica. "That's interesting. There's a clause in Eleanor's will. One that says the full inheritance only transfers if the heir has a stable, scandal-free reputation. Any sign of instability, and it triggers a reversion, meaning it all goes to the next named kin." My blood went cold. "Who's the next named kin?" I asked, even though I already knew. Claire leaned closer. "Me." Veronica stepped forward, voice cutting. "That clause only applies if mental or legal unfitness is proven, and we're not even close to that." "But that's the thing," Claire said, turning to me. "What if there was a scandal, something public, something loud, something that makes you look unfit?" She handed me a manila envelope. Her smile deepened. "You might want to look inside." I didn't want to open it, but I did. Inside were photos, blurry, grainy stills from years ago. Me, at a hospital, screaming at a nurse. Another one from that night I broke down outside a shelter with Tyler in my arms, and the worst, one of Ava crying while a social worker stood nearby. "Where did you get these?" "Records are public, if you know where to look, if you pay the right people." Veronica took the photos, flipping through them fast. "These won't hold in court." "They don't have to," Claire said, voice soft now. "They just have to circulate. Make the board nervous, make Eleanor second guess, all it takes is doubt." I stepped back, breath caught in my throat. "Why are you doing this?" She looked almost sad for a moment. Almost. "Because you don't deserve any of this. You were nothing. A foster kid with nothing but a broken smile. And now you want to take everything I worked for? You think you're better than me? No, I said. I know I am. She laughed bitterly. We'll see about that. Then she turned and walked out, into the storm. No umbrella, no coat, just fury and desperation wrapped around her like a second skin. Veronica shut the door hard. We need to get ahead of this. I'll call the PR team. We'll prepare a statement. But I wasn't listening. I was thinking about the look in Claire's eyes, about the kind of damage she could still do, about the way shame can drown you before the truth can save you. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of the threat, but because of the memories. The hospital, the shelter, the moments I tried so hard to bury now coming back to the surface. I wasn't perfect. I had broken down. I had screamed. I had cried in public. But none of that made me weak. It made me real. And real was what Claire would never understand. The next morning, Eleanor met me in the sunroom. She was holding a small sealed envelope. I heard about Claire, she said. About the threats. I nodded. She won't stop. Eleanor held out the envelope. Then maybe it's time you know the full story. I took it. Inside was another letter. This one not from Eleanor, but from my father. A man I had no memory of. A man I had been told abandoned me before I could speak. And yet, here it was, his words, his handwriting, dated just weeks before I was taken. He didn't leave you, Eleanor whispered. He was trying to fight for custody. He was going to take you away from all of it. And then he vanished. My hands trembled. What happened to him? Eleanor looked away. That's what we don't know. But someone made him disappear. And in that moment, I knew. Claire wasn't the end of this. She was the middle. And the beginning was darker than I ever imagined. The air in the estate had changed. It wasn't just tension anymore. It was something deeper. A kind of silence that felt loaded, like the house itself was holding its breath. I read the letter again and again, each word pulling a thread from a past I never got to live. He hadn't left me. He'd loved me, fought for me, died for me. I couldn't let that question stay unanswered. Veronica and I spent the next 2 days digging through Eleanor's archives, old legal files, court documents, even family correspondence. Eleanor had kept everything. Letters with postmarks from out of state, receipts from lawyers she never used. One name kept popping up, James Whitmore. He was my father's lawyer during the custody battle and his last contact before he vanished. I found his office address scribbled on the back of an old envelope, still listed, still active. We drove out the next morning. The law firm was now a dusty office sandwiched between a pawn shop and a payday loan center. The receptionist was young, probably newer, but when I asked for Whitmore, her expression changed. He doesn't see walk-ins. Tell him it's about the Caldwells. The name made her flinch. Minutes later, an old man emerged from the back. His eyes were tired, his suit too big for his frame, but there was a sharpness in his gaze. You're her, he said. His daughter, I replied. I need answers. He stared at me for a moment, then nodded. Come. Inside his office, papers were stacked everywhere, files from decades past, but he went straight to a metal cabinet in the corner, pulled out a thick folder, and placed it on the desk. This is everything I kept. I wasn't supposed to, but something always felt wrong. The folder held court documents, transcripts, a restraining order Eleanor had once filed against Claire. She was obsessed with keeping control, Whitmore said. When your father filed for custody, Claire intervened, made false claims, used contacts to stall proceedings. Your mother, Eleanor wasn't well back then. Claire exploited that. What happened to my father? His face darkened. I don't know for sure. But after a meeting with Claire's attorney, he was supposed to come to my office. He never showed, never contacted anyone again. Police wrote it off as abandonment, but you didn't believe it. He shook his head. Too clean, too fast. And there were rumors, whispers of people paid off, records disappearing. Claire had power, she had secrets. I stood there, numb. He wanted you, Whitmore said softly. He loved you more than anything. Don't ever believe otherwise. We left the office in silence. Back at the estate, I sat alone in the garden, the file heavy in my lap. Ava wandered over, sat beside me, her small hand curling into mine. "Are we staying here forever?" she asked. I looked down at her. "Do you want to?" She nodded. "It's the first place that feels safe." Safe. The word hit me hard, because for the first time I realized how unsafe we'd lived, not just in places, but in hearts, in relationships. The next morning, I made my decision. I wasn't going to run anymore. I called Eleanor and Veronica into the study, spread the documents out on the table. "I want everything public," I said. "The adoption, the forged papers, the custody case, my father, everything." Veronica hesitated. "It'll be ugly." "Let it be," I replied. "I'm done hiding." Eleanor placed her hand over mine. "You're braver than I ever was." "No," I said. "I'm just done being scared." Within days, the press got wind of it. Headlines started appearing. "Heiress returns, exposes years-long cover-up." "Caldwell family secrets unravel." "Adopted daughter's father disappeared in custody war." Claire panicked. She called, texted, showed up outside the estate gates twice before being turned away. But I wasn't speaking to her anymore. Instead, I focused on rebuilding. I met with lawyers to ensure the estate was fully secured, created trust funds for Ava and Tyler, established a foundation in my father's name to support children separated from family due to corruption or manipulation, and through it all, I kept uncovering more. Margaret? She had signed off on forged affidavits. Claire? She had paid a private investigator to track my father's movements before he disappeared. The deeper I dug, the clearer it became. This wasn't a family. It was a network of control, greed, and polished lies. But it was cracking now. I was the one swinging the hammer. Then came the subpoena. Claire filed an emergency motion to block the inheritance, claimed I was emotionally unstable, used the photos, the old reports, even tried to drag Eleanor's health into question. We were called to court. And as I stood before the judge, Ava's drawing in my coat pocket, I knew I had nothing to be ashamed of. "My client," Veronica said confidently, "is not only fit, she is the first Caldwell to confront this family's legacy of lies. What Claire Caldwell calls instability, we call resilience." Claire sat there, lips tight, jaw clenched. The judge ruled in our favor. Full inheritance rights, all shares transferred, legal guardianship confirmed. Claire left the courtroom without speaking. But I wasn't done yet. I approached her outside, reporters gathering like sharks. She turned, expecting me to gloat. I didn't. "I read his letter," I said. "My father's. He forgave you. I don't." Then I walked away. No applause, no dramatic music, just quiet. But it was the most powerful moment of my life. And as Ava ran up beside me, her hand finding mine again, I smiled. Not because I won something, but because I finally reclaimed what was always mine. The news didn't fade like most headlines do. It spread, fast, wide, loud, and with it came a wave of people I never expected. Letters from strangers, messages from women who had been silenced by family, manipulated out of their children, told they weren't enough. People who saw themselves in my story, who had buried their own truths just to keep peace. But I hadn't found peace by hiding. I found it by dragging every piece of rot into the light. That week, the estate was filled with movement. Lawyers finalizing transfers, journalists requesting interviews. Security tightened after someone attempted to break in, Claire's private driver trying to retrieve documents. He was arrested on site. And Eleanor, she was getting weaker. I could see it in her eyes, the way her hands trembled when she held her tea. She didn't say anything, but I could feel the unspoken urgency behind every conversation. "I want to sign the house over to you," she said one morning, "before anything else happens." "You don't have to do that." "I do," she cut in, "because I may not have long, and I won't let them circle like vultures the second I'm gone." She was right. Claire had vanished from public view, but her lawyer kept filing motions, appeals, desperate last-minute claims that we knew wouldn't hold. But each one came with cost, financial, emotional, mental. Eleanor knew it too. That night she handed me a second envelope, smaller, sealed in red wax. "This is for after," she said. "When everything settles, don't open it until you feel ready." I put it away in my drawer without asking. Maybe I wasn't ready. Not yet. A week later, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. The voice on the other end was familiar. "Margaret." Silence. "I know you don't want to hear from me," she said. But I didn't know what Claire was doing, not all of it. I just did the paperwork she gave me. She said it was for Eleanor's protection. "Margaret, you're a lawyer. You knew exactly what you were signing. I want to make it right." I nearly hung up, but then she said something I didn't expect. "I know what happened to your father." The air drained out of the room. "What?" "Meet me, 1 hour, St. Catherine's Church. Bring someone you trust." Veronica didn't want me to go. "It's a setup. Claire's reaching, or worse." But something in my gut told me it wasn't. St. Catherine's was nearly abandoned. Only 2 candles burned near the altar when we arrived. Margaret sat in the back pew, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. She didn't look like the woman I remembered. She looked older, tired, haunted. "I found something Claire kept hidden," she said. A statement. From a nurse at St. Luke's. "The night your father disappeared, he was admitted there. Head trauma. No ID. Someone discharged him the next morning using forged documents." "Who?" "I don't know, but I checked the signature. It matches a document Claire filed years ago during a property transfer. Same handwriting, same fake name." I felt dizzy. "He didn't vanish," I whispered. "He was erased." Margaret nodded. "And I think there's more. A private clinic, off books. Claire used it often. Patients with no records, people who needed to disappear." "Where is it?" She handed me an address scribbled on a receipt. 3 days later we drove out. The building was run down. Rusted gates, no signage. But inside, records were hidden in old cabinets, locked drawers. With the help of Eleanor's team, we got warrants, unsealed boxes, found files dating back 20 years. One name stood out, Jonathan W. Bennett, my father. A full file, photo, admission report, discharge sheet. He'd been in a coma for 6 months, and then transferred. "Transferred where?" I asked. Veronica frowned. "It's blank. The page is torn." But we had enough to go public, enough to reopen the investigation, and that was when the House of Cards collapsed. Authorities raided Claire's townhouse, found hidden servers, paperwork showing payouts, surveillance contracts, bribes. She'd been tracking me for years. She was arrested the next morning. No cameras, no last words. Eleanor cried when she heard. "Not because I'm sad," she whispered, "because I'm relieved. She was mine, but I lost her long ago." That night, for the first time in weeks, I sat alone. No files, no lawyers, just quiet. I pulled out Eleanor's red-sealed envelope. Inside was a letter. "If you're reading this, I'm gone. But you've already proven stronger than I ever was. I let Claire control me. I let fear drive me. But you broke the cycle. This house, this legacy, it's yours now. Just promise me one thing: love those kids louder than anyone ever loved you, and never let silence take root again." I cried for a long time, not because I was broken, because I was whole. And then I lit a candle. For Eleanor, for my father, for every version of myself that didn't survive to see this moment. And in the flicker of that flame, I saw it. The last twist, a line in the clinic's logbook. "Patient transferred to Ravenwood Sanctuary upstate. No date, no discharge confirmation, no death certificate. My father might still be alive." I didn't sleep that night. The words burned behind my eyes. Ravenwood Sanctuary. A place I'd never heard of. It sounded more like a retreat than a medical facility. But everything about my father's disappearance had been disguised in polite names and clean paper trails. By sunrise, I had a plan. Veronica made a dozen calls. Most places had never heard of Ravenwood. The one clinic that did exist under that name was a private, off-grid psychiatric care facility in upstate New York. No public access, no patient list. It didn't even have a working website, but Eleanor's old legal connections were powerful. One phone call and a retired judge sent over a sealed court order allowing us temporary entry under the guise of a family history inquiry. As we drove through the thick forest roads toward Ravenwood, my chest felt tight. What would I find? What could I find? The building emerged like a shadow, stone walls, barred windows, ivy curling around wrought iron. A nurse let us in without a word. The halls smelled like bleach and dust. The patients we passed looked distant, hollow, like their lives had paused decades ago. The administrator met us in a sterile office. "Why are you really here?" she asked. Her voice was clipped, guarded. I slid the court order across the table. She sighed. "We have no Jonathan Bennett on our records." "You did," I said. "We have evidence he was transferred here 22 years ago." She hesitated. Her fingers tapped the desk. Then she stood. "There is one patient," she said. "No name. Brought in with forged paperwork. Severe memory loss. He never spoke. But he fits your description." We followed her down a long hallway. It ended at a single room. White door, no windows. The nurse unlocked it slowly. Inside, a man sat by the window. Older, thin, his hair grayed, eyes blank, but alive. He looked up as we entered, and something in me shattered. Because even after all those years, even after time had weathered every inch of him, I knew. It was him. It was my father. He stared at me, confused. Then at Veronica. Then back to me. I stepped closer. My hands shook. "Dad?" I whispered. He blinked, then blinked again, and a tear slipped down his cheek. "I remember," he said, voice hoarse. "You had a purple blanket. You used to carry it everywhere. I called you Peanut." I fell to my knees. He was real. Alive. I wasn't crazy. The next few days moved in slow motion. Doctors confirmed his identity through DNA. His memory loss had been drug-induced, long-term sedatives, likely administered to keep him silent. Over time they wore off, but no one had bothered to check, because they were never meant to help him heal. They were meant to make him disappear. I brought him home. The estate felt different with him there, like the house was breathing easier. Eleanor's favorite nurse helped him adjust. Ava and Tyler warmed to him immediately, sensing the softness in his eyes, the quiet gentleness that no trauma could erase. And for the first time, I saw myself in someone else's face, my hands, his eyes. We sat in the garden one morning, watching the sun creep over the hills. "I thought I'd never see you again," he said. "I thought you left," I replied. "I never would've." "I know." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small, a silver necklace. The charm was tarnished, but still beautiful. "Your mother gave me this. I kept it for you. Thought, maybe someday." I closed my fingers around it. Someday had come. Weeks passed. Claire's trial began. Charges stacked like bricks. Fraud, obstruction, conspiracy, unlawful commitment. Margaret testified. So did the Ravenwood administrator. There were whispers she might not make it out of prison. But I didn't watch the coverage. I had no more room for her in my life. Instead, I focused on the foundation. Named it after both my parents, Jonathan and Eleanor Foundation for Family Justice. Its mission was simple. Uncover the hidden, give voice to those who had been silenced, protect children from the manipulations of the powerful. We got funding from major donors. My story was being adapted for a documentary. And that Thanksgiving, I cooked dinner myself. Not a fancy banquet. Just me, the kids, my father, Veronica, and a few women from the foundation. We sat around the long wooden table, laughed, remembered. He cried when Ava hugged him and called him Grandpa. I looked around, heart full, from the garage to the head of the table, from silence to reclaiming my voice, from scraps to legacy. And just as I thought I couldn't cry anymore, the front doorbell rang. I opened it to see a young woman standing there holding a manila envelope. She looked nervous, eyes darting past me into the house.